Hi and welcome to today's video. Today our video is going to be on writer's block. Now, even though this is a big subject and something I hear about all the time, everybody struggles with it, whether or not they like to admit it. In other words, everybody is not completely always full of ideas, and that's okay. There are times that we have to sit down and think about new ideas. And so I'm going to give you 12 tips on how to get those creative juices going in your head, and so you can always keep writing and you don't have any more blocks when you're writing. So the first tip is always have a notebook. Whenever you're going places or even when you're at home, always have a notebook. You never know when you'll get inspiration, and you just need to write. Sometimes it just takes getting out your notebook, sitting down, and just writing what comes to mind. Sometimes a good brain dump is always something good to do when you're always carrying around a notebook and you just need ideas. Just sit down and write down all your ideas. Also, one thing I find for me that motivates me is getting a cool notebook, getting something that would inspire me to write. So maybe, I don't know, a picture of something I like, or that it looks pretty, there's cool shapes, or whatever works for you. I always think that having a notebook with you is what's going to help, is one of the good ways of getting rid of your writer's block. So the second tip is writing prompts. This is something I've learned recently, something new I've learned, and writing prompts are little paragraphs or ideas for writing. So something like, write about what you hear outside, or write about the smells outside, or things like that, or here's a character, write about this character, or let's pretend your character was in a plane crash, kind of to help you get those ideas flowing. Maybe even if it starts a new story or helps you in your story you're working on, writing prompts are really good. And then when you get the hang of them and understand how they work, then you can create your own. Write a whole list, so when you are having writer's block, you can sit down, look at your prompts, and write them. One of the things I suggest would be getting like a journal or notebook specifically for your writing prompts, and write at the top something like, okay, let me think. Or we'll stick with the plane crash one. Your character's in a plane crash. How would he or she react? And then you write underneath it a whole long story, paragraph, whatever, about answering that prompt. And usually those get your juices flowing. That really helps me when I do writing prompts. It's easy to either come up with another story or help me in my story, help my character or story develop. And that's another good way of helping you with your writer's block. So the third tip I have is making time. Sometimes one of the things to help us with writer's block is that we're just not giving it enough time. If you care about your writing, and if you care about your story, your article, your poem, whatever, sometimes all it takes is just taking the time. Sitting down, taking 20 minutes, 15 minutes, setting a timer, whatever, however it works for you. Sometimes even the best thing is to look at your schedule for your week and decide what days are better for you to write. Sit down and just take time, or just make a day to go and write. Sometimes my mom, for example, when she needs to write and she has a deadline or she just wants to write, she'll just go to a coffee shop with Wi-Fi, so she can sit down and write what she needs to write, and it's quiet and you have that time, because sometimes all it takes is just taking the time. The fourth tip is reading. So when you're reading books, that is what can help you, inspire you to write. A lot of times when I read books, or then I get inspired to write a story, or how I can make my story move along. Like I mentioned in one of my older videos, sometimes when you're writing a story, like if you're going to write a mystery, it would be a good idea to read a mystery, so it would help you understand how you can, make it mysterious and, have an actual mystery in it. And that's what I like to do when I'm stuck on a story. I'll just read a mystery, or I'll read a fantasy book to help me understand, because those authors have already wrote those stories for us, and it's easy for them, so for us to learn from them. Also reading other people's stuff, other people's articles, other people's books, but more articles, so that you can kind of understand how people now write stories and how it gets out and published, and how to capture your reader. The fifth tip I have is to reread. Reread your old stories and your old poems, whatever. Sometimes all it takes is just rereading it over and over, reading it out loud, whatever. Sometimes just rereading it, you realize, oh, I can add this to it, or I can add a new character, I can get rid of this character, I can kill it off, whatever. Sometimes rereading it helps you get inspiration, and you won't be having your writer's block. I find that when I go over and read it, I find things like grammatical errors, or things I can take out, things that really aren't needed, or decide where am I going with the story. So I highly suggest rereading your stuff, and especially rereading it out loud. That would be a good way to get rid of some writer's block. So the sixth tip I have is don't label. No labels. Don't label yourself. Don't say I'm not a writer, or I can't do that, or I'm not the mystery type, I'm not the fantasy type, I'm not the article type, I'm not the poem type. Don't label yourself. You're not being open-minded, and if you are open-minded, you'll be able to create other things. And when you're able to create new things, then you won't be so blocked, and you won't have as much writer's block as long as you're open to everything, and including ideas that people give you, things you hear, things you come up with in your own mind. So don't label yourself. Tip number 7 is to be open-minded. Sometimes people get inspirations from rappers that they find. Sometimes they get inspiration from conversations. Sometimes they read other people's works. Sometimes you just have a conversation with somebody and you come up with ideas. Sometimes the best ideas are just something you write down. Just always be open-minded to anything that can come your way, because if you're open-minded, you'll always have ideas flowing in your mind, and when you have ideas flowing, then you won't be having writer's block. So the 8th tip I have is reflection. Sometimes it just takes sitting down with your story, your poem, whatever, and asking yourself a few questions. And so I came up with a couple questions you can start with, but then always branch off, because it's always good to ask questions so you know exactly where your story is going. So, what kind of person do I want my character to be or to become? Where am I going with this story? As in, what's your thesis? What are you trying to teach people? What message am I trying to get across to my readers? So, where are you trying to go with the story would be like, okay, well, am I trying to kill this person, or am I trying to help them find their father? You know, that kind of thing. Or the message would be like, and I think it's different, the message and where I'm going in the story, because what are you trying to teach people? Where you're going in the story is, where is your story going? How are you going to keep it going? Is the father going to be found? Is he going to die? Something like that. But a message would be more like, okay, am I going to teach people that you can follow your dreams, or am I going to teach people that bad is good? You know, things like that. So if you're blocked and you're stuck and you're having writer's block with one of your stories or poems, just sit down and ask these questions. Those are some basic questions, but those are good questions to get you started. So I would suggest sit down, write down all these questions, write down more questions you can think of, and answer them. Sometimes you'll surprise yourself and you'll figure out where you're going and where you want to go. So, tip number 9 is what inspires you. So, what does inspire you? Sometimes just thinking about what inspires you to write is some of the best ways to help yourself get out of your writer's block. So, whether it's books, pictures, movies, magazines, going sightseeing, looking at posters, whatever, looking at kid books, pictures, sometimes that when you're having a block moment or you just want to write, sometimes the best thing to do is what inspires you. So find what inspires you and do it. Go find that inspiration. So if you like to look at pictures and that's what helps you write, find a really cool picture, sit down and write a story about that picture. And that can help you get your juices going. And sometimes when you get your juices going, and even if you write a totally different story than what you're working on now, sometimes that will just help you get motivated to write that story. I believe that sometimes we should work on what we feel motivated on. Because if you're going to try and push yourself to do something that you don't want to do, you're not going to be able to get the good parts of your story out into your book, because you're writing because you have to write. I think and I believe that we should write as soon as we feel motivated. So if we feel motivated to write one story, write it. If you don't feel motivated anymore, take a break. And if you feel motivated to write something else, write it. Sometimes that's what helps you get into that motivation. So find what inspires you so you don't have to get this writer's block. Tip number 10 is social media challenges. I am a part of many social medias, and I know a lot of people have their favorite social medias. And one of my favorite things to do is to just kind of look online and find some challenges. I have created my own since then, and one of my favorite things to do is get a picture and give some guidelines and just see what I come up with, or see what other people come up with. Because like I said, sometimes reading other people's stuff is what can inspire you. So if you find a challenge online to do, a writing challenge, and do it and read other people's stuff, sometimes that can inspire you. And that will help you with your writer's block, I think, if you have those challenges, something to get you motivated and going. Tip number 11 is websites. So I'm not going to give you a huge long list of websites. So I'm going to give you 2 websites that I recommend the most. So one is webook.com, and it's set up like a telephone, and you dial it. So it helps you if you're stuck on trying to figure out a character, or how to kill a character, or you need a whatever. It will help you with your writer's block. So webook.com. And the other one is NaNoWriMo, which is short for National Novel Writing Month. And I like to take part of it because that is another good way of inspiring me to write. Because thousands of people get together in November to do this writing challenge type thing. You write a story and they give you goals, and it's pretty fun. I've enjoyed it. I tried it for the first time last year, and it was hard sometimes to try and get those words in, but in the end it was nice to read other people's stuff and read what I came up with. And since then it's even easier for me to try and be motivated for the next year, to get excited and plan to work on a new story or keep working on that same story. And the last tip, number 12, is goals. So with goals, that's pretty easy, but I'm going to give you a few suggestions when it comes to your goals. I think that first you should find a mentor. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to find someone who already is good at writing. So anybody, even if it's your mom, a sibling, a friend, someone online, try and find someone who can help you, make you more accountable, help you do goals, help you read your writing if that's what you need, give you feedback that you need. Because sometimes just getting feedback is a good way to do that. And having a mentor, they'll be able to help you, tell you where your weaknesses and your strengths are, so you can not have writer's block. And it will help you be accountable for your goals. And if you are not interested in a writing mentor, then you need to be accountable yourself. Sometimes you just have to you can't just throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, I can't write, I have writer's block. Sometimes you just have to be accountable for your writing. So write out some goals and be accountable for them. Definitely write them down. Even if you have a mentor, write them down, because you need to be accountable. And however you write them down, whether online or on a paper, make sure you're accountable for them and you're actually going to get them done. Find that motivation so you can get rid of your writer's block. So I hope these tips were helpful for you, And I challenge you guys to try those tips and tell me what you think. And maybe none of them work. Maybe it's time for you to come up with your own ideas. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week on our next video.